we need to compress the information in a way that other people can read it and understand it the best way possible, because you have no idea how many times I've asked for something and I get back a 40-page PDF.
Jorge B. Macías. Jorge is the founder and a GTM engineer at the GTM Engineering Company.
If you have to go back and rewire things again, then that's not AI native. For me, it's like you leave it running, and whenever things update and get more powerful, everything else that you're doing sort of like elevates. The expectation of my client also is raising because they're using more of AI, so they're expecting things to move faster. And I think we need to develop a culture where we just don't give tasks away.
What is your current go-to AI tool that you find yourself using every single day?
I would say I have a favorite one for sure. Like I'm sort of like a tool tester myself.
Okay.
And I don't get married with tools either. But my go-to I would say three tools right now that are my go-to. It's Claude Code. I've been sort of like blending that in with everything. I think Clay is the other one that's been super powerful for me as of lately, just because I have a background in industrial engineering, and I used to take like a bunch of classes and a bunch of projects that were like all the stats, all the analytical work that we need to do behind the scenes was being done in Microsoft Excel. So I think Clay is like my Microsoft Excel. Like I'm pretty shifty around tables, which makes me really just powerful. And then another one that I've been using and working on a lot is one called Octave, which is sort of like this context engine thing where you can blend in like your personas, use cases, customers, competitors, a little bit of like everything, and it's sort of like it'll find the best way to write or the best angles to approach things depending on who you're talking to and what.
You mentioned it very briefly there. You've had a bit of an interesting career. You know, you started off as an industrial engineer. That was what you did, and then moved into enterprise selling, and now being so embedded within GTM. What It's really cool because most people I have on this podcast have a much more linear career. Like this is what they've been doing the whole time. I'd love to know, like, what has taking that non-traditional path kind of taught you that you find a lot of other people maybe miss? Like you mentioned there, it's helped you with using Clay. Like, are there other things that you think it's taught you that other people don't do?
Oh, that's a great question. I think um we are on a world right now where we are manufacturing data factories. And I think industrial engineering lets me think about go to market like anything that I'm doing. But right now, go to market engineering, in the past, sales operations, revenue operations, and before that, selling as a production line, like similar to how I would look and analyze a manufacturing plant, which is what a lot of industrial engineers do, even though it's not very common. I think there's a lot of misconception of what industrial engineering is. So I think once you understand it's all about like processes, and like each industry and each business is going to have a lot of those processes, and you get very scientific about how you make things better, more efficient, standardization, etc., then the world is sort of like your oyster. Like everything can be worked on, and everything could be uh basically you can improve the throughput about every single process. So I think I've learned to think differently, because I think about everything as this small manufacturing plant. I even think about like software engineering chops, for example, as this manufacturing. Like you're getting ideas, scoping it out, you're building it, and you're testing it, and then It's not very different from like producing a teddy bear or producing a microphone or producing every single physical product that you see around you. So I think that's like the number one thing. I think it's more of like a mentality that I've had. Um, and then the other one is very um about process. I think if if you look back to how people have promoted sellers, it's like, oh, this person is really good at talking. This person is really good at emotional intelligence. This person is very good at all these like emotional, hard to quantify skills. But then on the management side of it, sales is more one of the most KPI driven departments in every single company. And they're like, you're hiring based on qualitative, but then you're retaining on quantitative, which is
That's
a very interesting combination. And for me, selling has always been about the process. It's more quantitative than the qualitative. And yeah, there's a side of it like you like people need to trust you. People need to like build rapport. Like all of that's important. I know. But at the end of the day, it's a process. You're gonna talk with 100 people. 30 are gonna entertain your idea. 15 are going to like go jump on a call with you. 9 are going to like follow up and move it forward. 5 are going to get into like a contracting process, and one's going to close. And like that sort of like waterfall or like process where percentage wise everything's dropping as you go, like if you take all the emotions away and you take like all the qualitative aspects of it, it's still a process. It's still like manufacturing. Like it's the same thing. So um going back to like industrial engineering, it helped me to like take the emotional component out of it. So if things go well, I don't get too high. If things go bad, I don't get too low. Because I know if I keep making my calls, if I keep sending my emails and I keep like doing the things that I know I need to do, the numbers are always going to be in my favor. And I'm more of like being very strategic on what are those numbers and why versus like getting caught up in each individual scenario.
Talk to me about so a lot of the time on this podcast, where a lot of people say that the big problem that GTM teams and systems are, it comes down to the data ultimately, and they're adding all these AI tools and new stacks of all this stuff on top of data that is either old or hasn't been put together properly. It's not in a correct lake. Is that because I know you help a lot of other companies and you've done so much in your career within GTM. Is that an issue that you've also found, that actually the data underneath all of these kind of systems and processes that you're talking about is actually super important? And what's the kind of first step that you sort of take to make sure that that is all in place before you start adding the Clays, the Claude codes, the Octaves, all of these tools on top of it?
I think the first one is having like a good account information and prioritize like most of the clients that I work with are B2B. So all my feedback, I think the caveat, it's always going to be like B2B driven. So just something to throw in there. I think it all starts with the right accounts. I think you could be the best seller in the world, and if you're dedicating 10-20% of your time to the wrong account, it's gonna be hard for you to hit quota. It's gonna be hard for you to like make it 1 or 2 more years into President's Club because you're investing your resources without like a data driven like prioritization matrix or something. So usually where I always love to start is, okay, let's go into the CRM. Let's make sure that you're at least using the right tools for the right reasons. one common mistake I see in a lot of startups is they start tracking deals or opportunities, and then they want to start tracking leads, they want to start tracking partnerships, they want to start tracking everything on the same object. And then what you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know, is that CRMs are built in a way for a reason. And like the deal object, it's built for deals and for opportunities, and leads have like their own separate section or their own separate object that's pre-built in a way that everything that you want to then report on and do, it's sort of already pre-built on that object. So if you start like, if you don't track life cycle stages, then in the future, filtering is going to become a mess. If you blend deals with leads, then when you start bringing SDRs, everything's going to be a mess. So first, I always try to think about CRMs and infrastructure, and then I start thinking about accounts and having all those the information inside those account records. So thinking about country, state, region, number of employees, industry, all of that like very common information about companies, and having all that enriched in the CRM so we can start scoring. And then once you have tier one, tier two, tier three accounts, and you have like a baseline on how everything's going to be measured against like something that we pre-agreed, then you're going to have your AEs, you're going to have your SDRs, you're going to have a way to know if people are investing time in the right accounts, and in the future, then on the right contacts within those accounts, because it only makes sense to invest resources into finding the right contacts once you know they're on the right accounts. So that's sort of like the mental methodology that I always like to go through regarding like how do I tackle a lot of this systemic problems that startups have for like blending all the tools together.
I think it's really interesting as well. We talk about this idea of being kind of AI native now within startups. And are you guys? I can see you laughing as well. And this has been like a fun term for me. I mean, let's pause here. Like, let's get your thoughts on that term first of all, because someone else I had on the podcast was like, unless your company was founded in the last like 6 to 12 months, no company is AI native because you had tools built. And I think there's such a blurry line between AI tools and AI nativeness, whatever, and automation. Like, what's the difference? Because everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we're AI native," and it's like, "No, you're not, dude. You just automated a load of stuff. Like, that's not AI native." So, like, it'd be cool to get your thoughts on this. And I feel like you've got a lot to say on this. So, yeah, I'm going to let you cook.
Yeah. I think when my mind always goes to AI native, to how do I build something in a way that I don't need to touch? And whenever models get better, the whole process gets better. And I don't have
Right.
to I don't have to rebuild anything. I don't have to rebuild the model. I don't have to rebuild the system. It just gets better as long as models get better. Um, so that for me is AI native. If you have to manually go and change prompts and change like the model itself, once you have to like go back and rework on a workflow or like set up another Zapier N8N or Clay or whatever tool you're using, if you have to go back and rewire things again, then that's not AI native. I think like for me, it's like you leave it running, and whenever things update and get more powerful, everything else that you're doing sort of like elevates with those models being changed. I think that's hard natively, and I think that it's more of a buzzword than
Yeah.
anything for like VCs, private equity, and the ones driving on the money. Like it's part of the game, like the AI native, like we've gone through all the cycles. Like you've been in the industry for a lot of time. So one time it was like big data, then was like data engineering, and then we were talking about data lakes, and then they all had the same idea, which is like just get as much data as possible and let's create like things that are more efficient through that. And I think AI is just like an AI native is just like the next boom. But then I do think harness is going to be the next big boomy like word that's going to be used and it's going to be thrown around. It's like, how do you pick the right model for the right thing?
Right.
Which I know it's picking up, but I think that's going to be the next AI native buzzword.
And talk me through like the difference. You mentioned it a little bit there, but like, is there anywhere in specific where you see like people getting this really wrong when it comes to like automation or AI nativeness? Like, there's this kind of new role that's come out in the last few years, which is a GTM engineer, and everybody I speak to on the podcast has no idea what that really is. But maybe you can help me. Like,
Yeah.
and it's literally your name's on the door. The idea of this GTM engineer. What should a GTM engineer, I guess let's go back to the beginning. What should a GTM engineer be doing within a company, and what are the main things that they need to be really like watching out for when it comes to, AI nativeness, automation, everything within GTM really? I realize it's a big question there.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind with GTM engineering, it's sort of like how it diverges from RevOps or
Yeah.
sales ops, because it's different. Like sales ops and RevOps was created for the finance team and for the board. It's like, how can we get all this reporting and all this data that we need to make decisions about where we at, who need to fire and who we need to hire, and like to set up incentives and things like that. So like I think just their headspace was not in the best place to actually help the growth, sales, marketing, and CS teams. And I think first of all, like I would like to like start there as a base where that's where it diverges from the role that we've seen for the last 10 years. It's where like imagine if the sales ops, revenue ops, and marketing ops team was really building to help the sales, marketing, and CS role instead of the finance. So
Yeah.
um the background it's going to be fairly the same. That's going to be someone that's technical, that has the patience for trial and error. I think there's this very undersold skill for a GTM engineer, which they need to be able to explain things that are very complicated in similar and like simpler ways. Because like if you get too deep into technical stuff, people sort of like deassociate, and then you're never going to be able to move things forward. A go-to-market engineer, usually it's very broad. I think just including the GTM word in it includes a bunch of departments, which makes it harder. But in my mind, it's like if you blended a software engineer with a sales and RevOps person that knows a lot about the CRM and someone that from sales and marketing, and you blend all those skills together into someone that's shifty with code, can vibe code things, can test things, but it's also building towards the revenue team versus the finance team.
It's so difficult these days, isn't it? Because everyone within GTM has to be like, there has to be a certain element of being a Swiss Army knife, right? In order to be, successful. Like you said, you've got to be able to kind of do all of those things. I know, before you kind of got to where you are now, am I right in saying you were part of like, you scaled the first Puerto Rican, you guys were part of like the Y Combinator startup? I know I've pulled this straight from LinkedIn, but I want to get into this, man. Like you scaled that straight away, I think from like 0 to 3 million ARR. Like what, I've done my research. What,
Yeah, it shows.
yeah. What, Jorge, like what was the, looking back on that now, what were the specific things that you think you guys were doing to really make that happen? And then on the other side, are there any things now, like what lessons have you learned now that you're like, oh, we should have done that, and we could have maybe not that I'm saying it's not an achievement, but it's good. That's the best way to learn, right? Is looking back at what you did before. But first of all, yeah, what did you do specifically to kind of make that happen?
I think first of all, we had a great team of people that we
Mhm.
already knew each other from college, and we were doing like student association things, etc. So there was like a lot of trust built into that made it work. I think we also all of us had nothing to lose. We're young, and we didn't have like a structured way of thinking about how things should look and how things should be
Right.
done because we didn't know anything. So the power of ignorance was really, really powerful there. I remember this, we were selling to medical offices, and I remember we had like a hoodie. Like we have some like merch from the company, which was a hoodie, which was to work on the office. And one time I didn't have time to change, and I went with a hoodie to like a medical office. And the secretary was like, "What are you doing? Like this is not the way that you sell to doctors. Like they're used to like people being like all buttoned up and all." We were like um disrupting, or we were, so they had like a mental model of like how someone that would sell to a doctor needs to look at, and we broke that and we threw it to the trash, and we built our own rules. And I remember doctors loved their hoodies. We sold a bunch of hoodies to doctors who are like, I'm gonna buy your product, I'm also gonna buy your hoodie, and I'm gonna promote them because like you guys are doing something big, you're doing something different, which really resonated. I think we also were doing go to market engineering before it was a thing. Like I remember we were scraping Facebook groups to like get lists that we would push into our Salesforce instance to know who to call to and what to do. And we also had like a like we had a demo for our product that was also a lead magnet, that whenever they were demoing the product, we were also capturing their phone information to be able to like, so we were getting like, we were growth hacking before that was a thing. And those like creative alphas, which is like, we were doing things first, like all of our competitors, their average seller's age was like 50 years old versus we were like 25-year-olds selling things. And we didn't went with the rules. We just made our own path, and that was really powerful. I think now looking back with things that we would have done better, um, was to bring that to other markets. I think we over indexed on the growth that we were having in Puerto Rico, and we could have like invested a little bit more into trying out other markets with like the revenue and the VC money, the low amount of VC money that we had for on those early days to like try out new markets and see if we could bring what we could. I think we gave like a few tries into scaling into the US, and they didn't love the hoodies. They didn't love that we were scraping their Facebook groups. Like there were things that we were doing here that which people loved that didn't scale the same way when we entered like the US. And I think there are other markets that we might have been able to enter and dominate, but we didn't like give enough tries at bat.
How important is, with the hoodies and you guys being young? And I loved what you said there about, like sometimes it does pay to be ignorant in a way, because you then have to just find your own path. Like I don't know, for me being in this world for the last few years, something I've been thinking about a lot is I think maybe sometimes within marketing or within GTM, I think it's good to look at what other companies are doing and your competitors and all this and see what they're up to. But sometimes I think that almost halts growth and it halts creativity, because you're so busy looking at them that you're like, oh, let's see how they did it and let's think about what they did. And you're like, well, sure, let's take some inspiration, but like let's do our own thing. Let's create our own hoodies, like you said. How important do you think now, is company culture and what the actual people are doing and how you guys talk, whether it's talking to your ICP and your potential buyers or talking to each other. AI is removing so much of that from us, and there's more and more people's Claude agent replying to people's Claude agents, whether the buyers have an agent that's talking to the seller's agent and things. How important is that? And it sounds corny, I know, man, but like, how important is that culture and human connection and maintaining that? You just told such a cool story of why that was so important. And I'd love to know like what your thoughts are on it now and as AI becomes more and more important in day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think culture is never going to stop being a very important thing. By the way, the I called what you said the seller Claude and the buying Claude. I call that I'll let my Claude talk to your Claude and figure it out. Like I think eventually things are gonna move in that
Yeah.
direction, which is like a crazy idea. But regarding culture, that's never going to be an important thing, and it especially for the GTM organization. I think um, GTM in itself is a competitive department, if you want to call it that, where you you need to create internal competition for it to flourish, because if you don't have nothing to compare it, like there's two sides of this. One, if you compare yourself to everyone, then you're always going to that's going to be a problem as well, because it's going to block your creativity of what you can really do and your potential. But I think not comparing to anyone, it's also a problem. So I think internally it is very important to like at least have someone where you can be like, oh, he's doing this, he's doing that, like let's try and collaborate and make things better. I think communication is another, it's another thing that you hinted at. I think with AI, we are being abstracted out into like our own way of communicating, if because we're passing that skill or passing that task over to AI, so it replies to email or to like build proposals or to do different work things. And I think the best cultures are always going to be driven by human communication and by someone like stamping that culture into the way they talk, into how often they talk, into how often they talk with their customers, their partners, their stakeholders. And I always think leadership is like a monkey see, monkey do sort of like profession where like your your executives and your leaders need to set the pace on how everyone else is going to like engage and work within that organization. So if you pass that over to AI, then everyone's going to be an AI culture, which is going to be awkward, and I don't know how productive it's really going to be. If we all start talking the same way and saying the same things and
Mhm.
stuff, like there's no creativity inside.
Do you think that's something that like founders or a CRO or something like that, are you worried, and are you seeing a bit of a trend of them starting to kind of lean on AI tools a little bit when it comes to sort of managing their team or leadership skills? Is that something that you've noticed?
Yes, I've 100% noticed. For sure. I think well, we do a lot of like go to market, RevOps, CRM related projects. And
Mhm.
one thing that comes to mind is territory assignment, where territory assignment used to be like this very thoughtful skill that CROs and VP of sales had of like, I'm gonna send Sandy to like a tropical place because he's gonna hang out with a lot bunch of surfers and they're gonna love him and he's gonna fit into that culture, and that
Mm.
salesperson is gonna be really good for that. But then we have this very executive, very button up person. Let's send that person to New York because he's gonna fit into like that finance, banking sort of structure. It's sort of, it was more of an art than a science. And when I think back to some of the projects that we're doing, it feels like every territory assignment workflow that we're being given, it's sort of like, hey, I passed this through Claude and told me like Claude told me we should assign this territory to this AE, this one to this SDR, and it is what it is. And like that RT part of the process being like abstracted out. Um and then as well with expectations, I think it's another one. Um I I feel more than ever, and I was talking to a friend yesterday about like how in my projects I'm building all these skills to be more efficient, but then when I step up my efficiency, the expectation of my client
Yeah.
also is raising because they're using more of AI, so they're expecting things to move faster and go faster. And I think we need to develop, and now tying this back to the culture, we need to develop a culture where we just don't give tasks away to AI and then we get the output and we send it to someone else. It's our job, and we need to have that ownership of one, we need to compress the information in a way that other people can read it and understand it the best way possible, because you have no idea how many times I've asked for something and I get back a 40-page PDF, like finding the time and distance from the world to the moon. I'm like, that's not what I asked for. I asked you like this three specific questions. I don't have time to read 40 PDF pages that you ran, like where you ran my three questions through AI. Like, I would prefer you just ramble a bunch of word into the keyboard and just tell me your honest thoughts versus a 40-page PDF. So it's culture. We need to create a culture where someone reads whatever AI gave them, it compresses it, and it digests that information in a way another human can consume it. And you take ownership of the things that are in there. What I think it's being a waste of time with AI, it's like a lot of people are like, hey, yeah, that's what Claude gave me. Like, I don't know, like it's not on me. If that was Claude, it's like no, like you're the responsible for your job. You're the owner of this project. It's not Claude. So that's culture for you. You need to create that culture of like we read, we humanize, we're doubling down that this is like the thing that we're going to send over and why.
And it's, dude, it's so interesting you said that, because what I've noticed as well, it is, the problem is people do that thing where you know, you ask the three questions, they then send this huge PDF over to you, and then you're like so cooked and overwhelmed by this huge document that you're like, well, I don't have time to read all this, so I'll just put it through Claude. And then you put that through, you know, Claude or whatever, and then that gives you the response, and you then send the response back. And then that starts to breed. Suddenly everyone's like, oh, it's just cool to just send a Claude document, and then you put it through Claude, and then you send the response back. And before you know it, like you said, that whole human creative side of startup world, where all these people get together with an idea and turn it into something real, has kind of like gone. And like, I'll admit, I messed up. Like, I messed up today, man. I messed up. I did what you just said. There's a task I've been meaning to do, and I was lazy, man. I literally just I created a 7-page document on Claude, and I just shipped it onto Slack and was like, here you guys go. And straight away the devs were like, what? And like, Seb, Oscar, if you guys are listening, I'm real sorry. I messed up. Like, I shouldn't have done it, man. But I was in a hurry and I knew it was a task I had to do. And straight away now I've got a meeting with them tomorrow, and I'm like, we need to sort this out. And actually, once I read the document myself, I actually answered a load of my own questions. And I'm like, shit, man. And now I feel bad. So like, I don't know, this is resonating with me a lot. And like, I'll hold my hands up. I think we all do it, right? We all, because it is such a cheat code sometimes, you know. And like, I get to the end of the week. No, I remember a few weeks ago, I got to the end of a week and I was like, I don't feel like I've achieved much this week. I was like, I don't feel like I've done much. And then I kind of spoke to one of my colleagues, Patrick, who does, he's like our kind of sales guy, and he was like, dude, like, here's the list of all the things you've done. And I think because AI has helped so much, I hadn't really felt like I'd, done that achievement. So I didn't have that like, oh, I really like grafted because it had helped me so much. And yeah, I don't know. It was a strange day or two. And I think it really has changed our relationship with like our expectation of what we think A, hard work is, and B, what we think we yeah, have achieved. I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, Jorge, but
No,
I hope this
no,
kind of makes
no.
sense, you know?
No. It makes total sense. I think there is, and I'm maybe going on a tangent here, but eventually,
Do it.
like how our psychology is going to change, like the psychology of work, how our relationship with work is changing and is going to change, and eventually, like if you don't felt like you've accomplished anything, but you did 100 tasks because you didn't go through the mental model of like reading,
Hmm.
verifying it. And if you did that, then you're gonna feel like, oh, at least I gave it a
Sure.
rate. Or so it's part of it. And the expectations and the bar is only it's only going to get higher and higher. So it's our job to sort of like put a pause to people and be like, hey, this is gonna take this amount of time because I am actually going to read this stuff, and I'm actually
Hmm.
going to like
Consume it.
take care of it and make sure we're on the right direction. So that's leadership, that's culture.
Yeah. Is there any, while we're kind of talking about this sort of like, workflows or lack of workflows, is there one, have you got, you mentioned your tools at the beginning. Is there one specific kind of like workflow that you're really sort of, leaning on at the moment, whether it's through the tools you mentioned earlier or kind of something else? It seems to be this term a lot of people are talking about at the moment is workflows. And alongside this podcast, we do things called playbooks, where kind of like a
Mhm.
TED Talk style thing where someone spends 10 minutes and shows them a sort of GTM AI led workflow. Like, is there one that you're kind of leaning on at the moment that you're finding is really helping you across any aspect of GTM? I recognize that's a broad question, but or that you've
No,
seen,
no.
companies doing.
The one that I've been leaning on a lot is one that I call like the CRM field mapping workflow, which is basically like a lot of the time they're like each company has a shit long list of tools that they use for their GTM motion, and a lot of these tools are now consolidating. So because building features is now easier than ever, a lot of the tools are just launching more and more and more features. This problem is only going to get worse with time. And then one thing that I felt with, especially with the CRM, which is where a lot of my go to market engineering. I think one thing that I haven't covered here is like there are two types of go to market engineering. One, I call it back end and front end. Front end, it's more
Sure.
of like outboundy, more salesy, which is like they're buying domains, setting up inboxes, and then they're blasting away emails and LinkedIn automations and things like that. And then there's like back end go to market engineers where like we're building, and that's the type that I like to do a lot, which is sort of like building the infrastructure for everything else to run through it, which is enriching contacts, enriching companies, finding decision makers, finding lookalike accounts, and sort of like building that and through the CRM in a way that it enables reps, SDRs, BDRs, marketers to be able to use the power of the go-to-market engineering tools without having to like relearn like this new tooling. So one thing that I've been leaning into a lot is how we map data from whatever tool we're having into the CRM, because CRM CRMs have like this very structured way of receiving data. But then if Ample Market, HubSpot, Apollo, Zoom Info, Clay, you have like these bunch of different enrichment tools that can push data back, but they all have their own data structures, which are never in sync with your CRM data structure. So one workflow I've been leaning on to a lot is how do I take for example, the data that I get from the clay company enrichments, which gives me, I don't know, 50 to 75 data points, all in different structures. And we take the CRM and we check the schema and we check the structure of the fields. And then we understand what transformations do we need to do to the data from clay to then be able to like push into that field. Because if we take the data from clay and we just take it how it comes and then we push it back, we're going to get errors and we're going to mess up all the reporting. We're going to probably trigger a bunch of workflows. So like creating a skill that checks for that before before we get into it. And then another one's like checking if we should not touch that field, if we should only write if it's empty, or if we should overwrite, which is a very common question that we're always getting ourselves into. It's like, if Clay gives us the most recent number of employees, then that field we want to overwrite. But then if we have a company name already in Hotspot, then maybe we don't want to rewrite whatever we had in Clay because like we already have one, and then the sales rep is going to search for something, it's not going to find it because we changed the name right in the middle of the process. But then industry might be a field that we only want to write whenever industry is empty because of like categorizing that is it's hard, and maybe the CRM has it on a pick list where we need to like transform that data into the options that we have in a pick list before we push back. And then sort of like review who owns each of those decisions and pushes that back. That's like a workflow that like that's something, a mental process that I've gone through like 50 or 60 different times on different projects. And after like doing it over and over again, I was like, I'm gonna build a workflow and a skill to sort of like help me do this for any tool, for any
Mm-hmm.
possible tool that I want to sync information back to. So
No, man, we need to get you on for a playbook. You need to show us that because that's such a universal problem, right? Like you said there, irregardless of the tools used, and there are so many out there now. There are so many. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to know which ones to choose from. We did an event back in May in Dublin in Ireland, and with a load of GTM professionals, everything, about 100 people in the room, and Emmett, our founder, stood up and said, hands up if you're overwhelmed by the state of AI right now. And basically everyone in the room put their hand up and he was like, if we're overwhelmed, how does everyone else feel? We're meant to be the professionals and knowing how this all works and everything, because there are so many tools. And I think, I don't know, it'd be cool to get your thoughts. So many of these workflows, I think, and especially with vibe coding and people building their own tools, and it works for them, but it doesn't work for the other 10 A's on their team, so it doesn't speak to the broader CRM and things. And it just causes so many problems. And I think having a workflow like that can be plugged into so many different tools, and universal seems to be the operative word there. I think that makes such a kind of big difference. Is that a kind of problem that you've run into a lot? Is all these people using so many different tools where they vibe coded one themselves? Say a small team has one, but another part of that same team is using a different one. Is that something that you see a lot of people doing? And how can they stop doing that, adopt something universally, and get everything talking to each other properly?
that is a huge problem that we come across all the time. And it's, I'm gonna be honest, in all transparency, I
Yeah.
always just let them run.
Okay.
And it's more of like a strategic move for myself, which maybe is wrong. But I've tried in the past to tell like, hey, you shouldn't like build this one-off dashboard for this AE, because those are going to be 4 or 5 hours that your AE is not going to be selling, and they're going
Yeah.
to use it for a couple weeks, and then they're not going to use it anymore. And then you don't want each AE having and building like their own one. So a lot of the time when they come to me and tell me like, hey, we're doing this very cool like hacky thing through Cloud Code to like blend everything into one place, most of the time I'll be like, go ahead, do your thing, like invite me. I would love to see it. I would love to learn from it. Yeah, like um And what most of the time, what really happens is like it starts breaking. It only works for one person. And then I go back to like, hey, that's why we're building everything through the CRM, because everyone's going to be in the CRM. The CRM is not going anywhere. It holds all the data. That's where like the day-to-day people are going to be working through. Then like that's the tool that we need to like focus our time with. And can I share my screen? Is
Yeah, for
that
sure.
something
Go
that
for
we
it.
could do on? So
Yeah.
here is one of the workflows that we've been building for a bunch of clients that I was alluding to before. Like, yeah, you can connect your API keys to Claude, and every time you want to go and search for someone's phone or email, you could just find it via Claude. It's going to take like prompting back and forth, fighting through it for like security and ethical reasons, etc. And eventually you're going to be able to do it. But then in our case, what we do is like we create a field inside the CRM. It's called find phone number, where you click it. A webhook sends the data to Clay. Clay goes finds the phone number using 30 different data providers, which are probably Claude's going to use only one data provider. It's going to be like, hey, Sandy, I couldn't find someone's number.
Mm,
Versus in my case, I'm using a bunch of them, and then I'm sending the data back into its CRM. It's kind of like I'm abstracting all the work out to them, and they can just click on something, refresh the page, and the number's already there. And same with like finding decision makers or finding lookalikes. It's sort of like you click on something, it runs in the back end, and you're back. And a lot of the time clients would be like, but why are we building that in the CRM instead of like building a Claude dashboard? And I'm like, because like a lot of people are using Claude as this one time ad hoc thing
mhm,
versus I want to build the manufacturing plant that's always going to be there. I think the CRM, going back to industrial engineering, is going to be the central source of truth for like that manufacturing plant versus having to go and buy something ad hoc and somewhere else and then coming back
mhm.
to it.
I love it. Jorge, feel like I could talk to you all day. We need to schedule in a playbook as soon as possible so you can show us that full workflow because that needs more time, man. That was yeah. That's deadly, as my friends in Ireland say. That's deadly. Like we need to know more about that. Where could people go if they want to find out more about what you do and what you get up to, man?
So I am rebranding my website,
Ooh.
which when this comes out, that's going to be already out. I hope so. Which is GTM-engineering.io, which is the first place that you're going to be able to go through that newly branded experience, which in my opinion is going to be a sick one. And then where I sort of like my diary and when I the place that I go to express a lot of this GTM projects that I'm working on and the things that I'm doing, it's a LinkedIn. So I can send you my LinkedIn account, which is LinkedIn dash Jorge B. Macías, which is my name. And there you're gonna see I post every day, every workday on LinkedIn for the past year, almost year and a half. So that's like my diary where you're gonna be able to like see everything that I'm working on, how I thinking, my life, my family, my everything. It's in there. So drop a follow, a connect, and let me know that you met me through the AI GTM Lab podcast.
I love it. I love it, man. Yeah. Anyone looking to connect as well, you'll be able to find Jorge's LinkedIn and website in the show notes below wherever you're watching or listening to this. Yeah, Jorge, thanks again for coming on. Thanks to all of you guys for listening or watching, and we will see you all for the next one.
Take care. Bye.